I'm Michael Humphrey, your host of Soul of a Man podcast, and we are super excited today, myself and my co-host.
I'm Darren Bryant, a.k.a. DB. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. We are excited. We're super excited today. We've got a young man here that we're going to have a great conversation with. It's Mr. Ray Trapp. Ray, we're glad to have you here, brother. I know I've been tracking you down. I've been bothering you for a few weeks now.
No. It's great. Absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you both for doing this, and thank you both for stepping up to this platform and having this amazing conversation, having these conversations to lead us in the right direction.
Appreciate that, brother.
Yeah,
really do.
Thank you. Excited. So a little bit about Ray. I'm going to let him talk some more about himself, but a little bit about Ray. Ray is currently the Vice President of Strategic Engagement for Research Triangle Foundation of North Carolina. In this role, he's responsible for connecting and creating strategic partnerships between institutions of higher education, corporations, government, and the community to support the 60,000 employees of more than 375 companies in Research Triangle Park. He previously served as the Guilford County Commissioner for District 8 from 2012 to 2017, which was followed by a time at North Carolina A&T serving as the Director of External Affairs under Chancellor Martin.
Aggie Pride.
He serves on more boards than I can possibly name, but one is the Durham Public Schools Foundation and also Leadership Triangle. Has received, again, more awards than I have time to mention and don't want to take away from our time, but this brother is decorated, to say the least. Served a time in the U.S. Navy, coming right out of high school.
Absolutely.
And was an interior communications specialist aboard the USS Harry S. Truman, and that was docked in Norfolk, Virginia.
Absolutely. Yep, Norfolk, Virginia based.
Thank you for your service, by the way, brother.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. He holds a Master's of Science in Agricultural Education, as I mentioned, from North Carolina A&T, and a Certificate in Nonprofit Management from Duke University. And we got to give him a little bit of grief because we see him in Cameron Indoor Stadium a little bit too often for two Carolina fans to appreciate.
Cameron is an experience, man. Cameron is a vibe. It's a bucket list thing for people.
I've heard, and I believe that.
Yeah.
I heard it's a hot box, too.
It is. It 100% is.
Haven't attended the game there, but heard it's an experience.
Yeah.
And Ray is also a certified diversity executive, and want to get into that a little bit and see what his points are on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that is working for the Triangle and for himself. Also a member, we won't hold it against him, but also a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity.
Blue Phi.
And as my note says, hopefully he don't come in here blue fine. Literally, got it on the page. Hopefully you don't come in here shouting blue file.
You brothers are Kappas, correct?
He is.
One Kappa. Okay, Kappa. Okay, got it. My stepfather was a Kappa also. Okay. And he's a part of the reason I'm not a Kappa. No. All love to the noobs.
all love to the D9. Right. All love to the D9. But yeah, Ray, we're thrilled to have you here, man. Again, I've been chasing after you. This is going to be our first show with a guest. You are our first guest.
Honored, absolutely honored.
As I was transitioning back to North Carolina, Ray just popped up on every media platform you could imagine. Here's Ray Trapp. And he was one of the persons I was determined to meet when I came back to North Carolina. I hit the state line. He's gone to Raleigh like the day before to start his new career. So, man, it was always impressed with what I saw, with what you were doing, and was excited to meet you and thrilled that we get the chance to do that today.
Absolutely, same here. I remember when your announcement came out, I was like, man, this brother I needed to connect with while I was in Greensboro. So I'm glad that we're getting the chance to connect.
Connection is made. So tell us a little bit more about you. I want you to start with 3 words that describe you, and then just give us your family dynamic and some background.
Absolutely. 3 words that describe me. I'm going to say authentic to a fault. caring probably to a fault, and community-based at all times. You know, I think that those things, and I know those aren't words, they're phrases, but that kind of encapsulates how I live my life. You know, I'm a Greensboro native. I always say that to say that Greensboro is also the smallest city I've ever stayed in. And so I'm a city person, love the city, but I love community. You know, I think that's important to put out there. Represent East Greensboro at all times, at all times. And also spent most of my formative years in Atlanta, so in DeKalb County. I graduated from Clarkson High School, so I got on my Braves hat, always have the A on at some point and somewhere. And so that's kind of my dynamic. You know, I know the down home Southern feel from being in Greensboro and born in Greensboro, but also have the city dynamic and the urban dynamic from being in Atlanta. And when Atlanta was coming of age, really, my, excuse me, I got to Atlanta in 90 and was there through all of that.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. As it's making me think of something that's actually really popular right now that just came out. So you were there during the Freaknik era.
Absolutely. And attended from a high school freshman every year, every year.
I'm just praying I'm not showing up on that video somewhere.
I'm sure that I will make an appearance somewhere at some point in some time, because we literally, from being in Atlanta and growing up in Atlanta, we were there. Like, for us, literally, we could leave our high school, which we did, leave our high school and walk 2 blocks to Memorial Drive and be in the thick of everything. And so, yeah, I was there for Outkast and Organized Noise starting and So Def and everything else. So that very much shapes who I am too. And it also shapes me from a perspective of, I know Black entrepreneurship and I know Black excellence. And I've seen it on the highest of levels. So that's what I want for everyone. That's what I want everyone to believe in and know that they can achieve that, because I've seen it. Yeah. You know, I come from a house where my grandfather didn't own a pair of jeans. Well, he owned jeans, but they were for working in the yard. My dad barely owned jeans, and I own 1 pair of jeans. And that's not to discredit anybody that wears jeans or works in jeans or anything else, but that's to show how dynamic we are as a people. And I think sometimes we get stuck in roles and we let people define our roles. But take a trip to Atlanta, take a trip to DC, look at some of the great things that are going on even in this area, in this region, what's going on in Greensboro with pushing, the Greensboro Black Business Leaders Council and all these dynamic things that we have going on. We have to lean into Black excellence. So for me, that's kind of the things that make me go on a day-to-day basis. Was primarily raised by my mom, but then in Atlanta raised by my dad. So I have that aspect too. I know being an only child with my mom, having everything catered to me and around me, and her taking care of everything, and then being in amongst a group of siblings with my dad. And so I'm kind of dynamic. I'm a Gemini sign, and I'm a true Gemini.
So is my wife.
Yeah, true Gemini. My mom used to say I could probably walk up on you in school and wouldn't know who you were, and I'm like, you're absolutely right. House Ray and school Ray are 2 different people, completely different people. But I think that those dynamics make me who I am. I have 6 kids in total, 4 that are mine, 2 are my wife's, and so they're all mine. So 6 in total, and their ages range from 28 to 9. And so across the board, and they're all doing amazing things and doing amazing work. My oldest he wants to be an actor. Well, I'm not going to say he wants to be an actor. He is an actor. He is an actor. And so it runs the gamut. And so I love pushing them and challenging them to do things and be better and be who they are. And so that's who we are. My mom's still here. My dad passed away at 57, but he was a huge influence on my life. Most of the things that I do, I'd say everything that I do, I owe to both of them. And all the experiences that I had growing up made me into the person that I am today.
So I think, so that's another thing we all have in common, the 3 of us, other than just being Aggies. We all 3 have lost our fathers at some point in time.
Yes.
I lost my dad. It'll be 3 years now,
Wow.
April 28th, so it's still pretty fresh for
yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that people don't prepare you for when that happens is that you hear the lip service of it gets easier. Well, it doesn't. You just learn how to manage it better, because there have been points and times in my life where I've almost instinctively picked up the phone to share something. And this is going on, it's been over 10 years now, and so those things kick in. And so for me, it was super difficult to deal with at the time because my dad passed away 3 days before I was sworn in as a county commissioner. Wow. He passed away on Friday. I was sworn in on Monday. And so even that morning, I was at the gym, which is a regimen and routine that I owe to him that I saw him doing growing up. And so I was on the elliptical, and I saw he had called. It was like 7:30. And I was like, well, I'll call him back once I get done working out because I'll see him on Monday because it's Friday. So I'm sure he's just trying to figure out what he needs to do, blah, 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 blah. So I got off, called him, didn't answer. So I didn't think about it or whatever. So continue to work out, continue to go through my day. And then my sister called me, who we don't talk that often. So I knew when she called, something was up. And so she told me. And so I think that one of the things that always stays with me is that I was the last person he actually called before he passed away. And so it was that day going through swearing in was like, man, this is the ultimate moment. This is a thing to make your dad proud, and you want him there. And so I think the thing that I think that he would be most proud of is that I got through the whole swearing in process without breaking down and held it together. But yeah, I don't think it gets any easier. You just learn how to deal with it better.
Doesn't get any easier. I lost my father in '96. And all these years later, intuitively we'll pick up the phone.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. You learn how to cope. Learn how to cope. But I was in my first semester of second year grad school. Yeah. In October. Yeah. And I had to get through another semester, and I can't do it. My brother said, nope, you gonna finish. That's right. He wanted this more than you wanted it for yourself. So had to push through. But yeah, it doesn't get easy. No, doesn't get easy. You mentioned Atlanta and the entrepreneurship that you saw so visibly there. Recently saw a quote from JD where he's beating up Atlanta music right now. And saying we've fallen so far off from where we were in the heyday with LaFace and So Def and all that. What you think about that?
I have the music taste of an 18-year-old. So I'm not one of these old heads that is going to bash today's music, because I think that the era of music and whatever music is popular at that time is what's going on with that generation. And so I think we discredit it and we discount it and we say, oh, well, this person is horrible. This person can't rap, this person can't sing, or this person can't do that. I loved Daz Effects when I was growing up, but now growing back and listening to grown men saying bum stickity, bum stickity. I'm not calling anybody out. They're errors.
Those guys went to Shaw University.
I know. I'm going to get hit. I know.
Yeah.
But it's,
right here,
it's no discredit to anyone. Every era has their music and their thing. And I think so we discredit eras of music or discredit what's popular at the time, because the same thing other generations said about rap was a fad. It wasn't supposed to be here anyway. And now we refer to those times as the golden era. So I think each generation has their era and their music, and I don't think we can discredit any era. I think that these young artists have figured out a new way to do it. Now, to JD's credit, I will say artist development is not where it needs to be. And that's because you can pop on the internet and I can be an overnight sensation. So I didn't have to go through artist development. So don't ask me to perform at a show.
Exactly.
Because I don't keep the crowd. No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Not rhyme over a track.
That's right. What are you talking about? Right. Yeah. And so I do agree with that. Artist development is lacking nowadays. But I think the music is just as creative. In some instances, more creative. And so I give young people their due. That they're doing exactly what they need to do, and the music that they make is for them and for me. I listen.
So I got a question for you.
Your last name is Trapp.
Exactly. Look, let me tell you. So growing up in Atlanta, this was my first tattoo, and it is Trapp. I got this when I was 16. I won't mention the name of the tattoo parlor that did it, but I've been the same size since I was 16. So they thought I was 18. Right. And so I remember being out and the young lady saying to me, I know you love the game, but don't broadcast it all over yourself. And I'm like, sweetheart, that's my last name. So yeah, it was difficult.
How do people respond to the ink now? At 40?
44, I'll be 45 in June. I think that growing up in Atlanta and growing up around the culture. So back to music, back to JD's point, No Limit was huge at the time. Yes. Everyone on No Limit had tattoos. So me and my buddies went and got a job just so we could afford to go get a tattoo. That was the whole point on it. And so I think early on in my professional career, no one ever knew I had tattoos because I always had on dress shirts. Even when we would go to an occasional golf tournament or something, I still put on dry fit or something that was long sleeve. And as I became more comfortable in being myself and understanding that being authentic me was what people wanted, then I was fine with it. It was like, oh, okay, whatever, and it is what it is. You get what you get. And I think that on that level for corporate people, when you're hiring people, I'm going to give you all of me. I'm going to give you who I am, because who you think you want and what you need are two different things, especially on the Black C-suite executive level. I think that corporations go after people that they think, oh, we need this type of Black person. Right. But when they get the authentic person in that role, either they're going to deal with it or they're not. One or the other.
But can we authentically bring all of ourselves into those spaces? Because I would imagine with you've been in a lot of rooms, you've been in a lot of situations, circumstances where you were the only person of color at this level. Even now. Can we ever fully bring ourselves, authentic selves, into the workplace?
I think it's bits and pieces. I think we give bits and pieces, and I think it's why on a corporate level you have a lot of allyship amongst Black people in spaces and women in spaces. Because the women, especially white women, once they've achieved a certain level of success, have had to do the same things that we've had to do. They've had to downplay their family life, or in some instances put their career over their family life, and it's suffered to get to that point. So for us, you have to give little doses. Like, oh, well, I'm going to give a little dose of me being, of my authentic self in certain spaces. And so I think that that's what we learn over time, is that, okay, how much of myself am I going to give, or how much of myself do I actually want to give to them? In this certain space.
And that's why I'm such a big proponent of entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship gives you the ability to be who you are because you run your own stuff.
That's right.
And you don't have to really care and cater to anyone else. So you can truly be your authentic self 100% of the time.
That's right. Yeah, I am too. And I think that it's a huge thing for us. And I think I've been blessed that in the roles that I've been in, even corporate wise, I've been able to operate as somewhat of an entrepreneur. My role was essentially new when I got to RTP. So it's for me to figure out how to make that role what it was. And so I've been blessed to have that opportunity, that even in the corporate space to still operate somewhat entrepreneurially. And I think that for people, and this is my advice to all people, even people on the corporate level, learn how to protect your brand and also project your brand even while you're in the corporate space. Because your brand will be your brand, regardless of what company you're working for. And so when you have your own brand, you can withstand and you can pretty much write your own check, because they're hiring you. They see you, and they see the brand that you've created. So you're just as much an asset to the corporation as the corporation is to you.
Brother, that's a dope piece of advice. It's a great piece of advice.
Yeah. Protect and project. How do you project it?
Is putting out there what your brand is. And I think people have to figure out what their brand is and then have to project that. And even when you're doing corporate functions, it's still you. You're representing the company and you're representing the corporation. So you make sure you give them credit and thank you for allowing me this opportunity. But that's your brand. You are your brand. So you have to at all times protect that and make sure that you don't lose your brand while you're in corporate spaces.
So Ray, I've been dabbling in becoming an author for like 10 years now. Yes. And my first book was on personal branding. Yes. Or it's going to be on personal branding, I should say. Can I count on you for some help on that?
Absolutely.
Because you just said a mouthful, man, and I'm over here, the wheels are turning as you're speaking, and I'm like, yeah, I've sort of dropped the ball on this. I got to pick it up again. So I appreciate that piece of advice.
Yeah, branding is huge. We have to do more with it, and that's even back again to what I see young people doing. Young people fully understand that. They're making millions upon millions of dollars to just hold up a piece of paper and endorse a product because they've protected and projected that brand that they built on social media. Yeah. So they fully get it and fully understand it. Whereas I think it's taken some of us a long time to get it because we've been so ingrained and so trained to think that, oh, well, I got to go get this job and I have to have this title at this particular job in this particular corporation. Well, you're attaching your identity to something that you can't control. You're attaching your brand to something that you can't control. And so we've got to make sure that we always think of ourselves and protecting our brand. And that's probably the Gemini, back to the Gemini thing. That's the only child, that's Sheila's son talking, the only child talking, that you put yourself, you're protecting your brand.
Good stuff. Good stuff. A quote, James Baldwin. February 1965. I was born in January 1965. So a month after I was born, James Baldwin in a debate says, to be a Negro in this country, you probably heard it, to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost all the time. How do you deal with the constant black male trauma that we deal with?
I think it's exhausting. And I don't think that we even get how exhausted we are at times. I think that we think we're fine and we're going along, and then one thing happens, and then you realize, no, I'm not fine. I'm not okay. I've been seen, and back to being in corporate spaces and entrepreneurship spaces, I'm holding the weight of everybody that hasn't been here previously. When you're the first black anything, that succeeding or failing is a big thing because a lot of people want to say, oh, well, look, we tried and it didn't work. Right. It didn't work. And that's based off of you and whether you succeed or fail. And so I think for me, the way I do it is paying back these types of things, having these types of conversations, giving back to the community, talking to young brothers, talking to young sisters. I had a young sister that called me and was like, man, I am struggling with my blackness in this corporate space. And how do you do it? And I said, the difficult thing is that you have to compartmentalize. So you take your wins when you can take your wins and also understand that you're going to have to do some things that you don't want to do just to stay at that level. Yep. But the wins are what you compartmentalize and say, yes, I got a win today. Yeah. I did this, I did that, and this helped my community so much. And you take those wins and build off those wins because it's tough. It's tough and it's absolutely exhausting, but we have to do it. If we don't, then who will?
I've to your point, and that authenticity in the workspace. As I've tried to talk to people and explain Jiho to people,
yes,
the time that passed, which is inexplicable. I said, what's in the water down there with you Aggies? It's almost cult-like. Why is everybody so thrilled and so happy? It was like, folks have taken off the mask for 4 or 5 days.
That's right. That's right.
Just authentically themselves in a safe space with folks that they know and love.
Absolutely.
It is the epitome of black love for that 4-day time period.
Without question.
And people love it. So
yeah.
It's truly, it's a homecoming for everyone. And I'll say growing up in Greensboro, it's Greensboro's homecoming too, whether they know it or not. Right. Or East Greensboro. Yeah.
That's an interesting point though. We have so much to talk to you about and haven't gotten deep into it. Interesting point. It's Greensboro's homecoming, whether they know it's theirs or not.
Well, they know because they're feeling the financial impact of it. You can't tell me that uptick in revenue for the city of Greensboro during that weekend is not felt.
But I question the support behind it at times from the city, and question whether it's there. My background, I worked 15 years for the NFL. Right. Deep pockets, right, of course, could do a lot of things, but even just visually, street banners, things along that line around the city, and you see some of it. Right. But was on a tour, intra-city visit, yes, a few years back with the chamber, yes, and we did one morning at A&T and the afternoon at Bennett, and half of that group, more than half of that group, had never ventured into East Greensboro, and certainly never on A&T's campus. No. I was floored.
Absolutely not. And it's amazing. In my role at A&T, I would bring elected officials who represented Guilford County and represented Greensboro that had also never been to A&T's campus before. And so I've heard a quote, I can't remember who said it, but it was just talking about blackness and how you can be white and choose whether you go into black spaces or not. Right. We never have that option. We don't have that option. So yes, you see that on full display, especially in a city like Greensboro that has 2 state universities. So you can choose which one that you would rather deal with and which one you would not. And you largely see that play out. And it goes to even the side of town. You see people that have never ventured, to your point, never ventured into East Greensboro because I don't need to.
I'm born and raised in East Greensboro too.
Okay, all right,
yeah,
perfect.
Born and raised there.
So you know we can even before we get into it, talk about downtown Greensboro and how the powers that be, when segregation came and segregation ended, that Greensboro ended downtown because they did not want to shop where we shop, so they created Friendly Center and all the other places that were specific to them and grew up West Greensboro as opposed to East Greensboro.
History. Yeah. So I come back and I hear that Murrow Boulevard is the tracks, and you cross over from downtown Greensboro, you cross over Murrow Boulevard where the post office is, and you're on the other side of the tracks at that point. So it's amazing. It is. Male-female issue. Famous speech, 1962, Malcolm X was talking to a group of women, and he says, the most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And we're hearing that. We're hearing that from our sisters. We're hearing that from our spouses, our girls. We're seeing it in the press. We're seeing it on the talk shows, etc. And I question that because I think there's no one more disrespected, more unprotected, more neglected than black men.
I think that it's an interesting dynamic because I think that black women are so powerful, having been raised by one. And I think that's where we get into what we see and what the reality is. I don't think I ever viewed my mom as unprotected. I'm sure she was, disrespected. Probably, because I think that we deal with the situation where when you look at qualifications and where people end up and where they work and those types of things, 100%. I think that we've got to a point where black men aren't being as discussed anymore. I think that, there's a focus that we're moving away from. And it's kind of the history of DEI. And once people get into the history of DEI and how DEI came about being because certain people decided that we couldn't focus on just the black conversation. It started as a black conversation on a corporate level. Right. And how do we increase black representation on a corporate level? Well, then it was, we can't just focus on them. So we got to focus on everybody. And so I think that as we've started to focus on everybody, which is where you should be inclusive, that you lose people along the way. Yeah. And I think that black men have gotten lost along the way. That the focus of mentorship at one point in time every mentorship group that you could see was aimed at black men. So we did lose young black girls in that process. There was no focus on black women or young black girls at that time. So we've ramped that up and have amazing programs that are doing that work. But I think in large part, we haven't picked that back up for black men or black boys. And I think that the programs we have, as well intended as they are focused on at-risk youth, and they should be. Yeah. But there's also another population of black men and black boys that are suffering that aren't quite at risk, but aren't affluent enough to have things done about their situation. And I think that group is 100% unprotected and disrespected because there's no focus for them. And so it was one of the amazing programs that I was involved with in Greensboro was Team Voyage. And so Team Voyage was determined to hit that group of children, young men, young black men at Page High School. And it wasn't the affluent kids, because Page has two completely different demographics.
Yes, it does.
They have the kids that come from East Greensboro and come from Claremont, and then they have the affluent kids that come from other parts. And so the East Greensboro kids were necessarily not seen. And so they needed someone to talk to them. And so these aren't necessarily kids that are at risk. You know, they're kids that for the most part are making B's and C's or C's and D's, but disruption here or there, you know, but in large part, I was the same way. And I was that same kid. And in large part, it's because you're super intelligent and they have you in classes that are beneath your intelligence level. Right. So you're done with your work in 10 minutes and I'm supposed to sit here for 50 minutes and do nothing? Right. No, of course, that's not going to happen. And so that's one thing. And so what we did was that group of kids that's normally there's no attention paid to them. This is all about them. It's 100% all about them and about having them prepare for SATs and college prep and do the things that sometimes your parents, when you're in that situation, are too busy to do. Yeah. In a single parent household, your mom is working 1, 2, 3 jobs trying to take care of you and everything else. So she's not going to make sure that you took the ACT or that you signed up for a foreign language, which you need to get into a UNC system school. You know, those are not things that they're going to look out for. And unless you have an advocate, those things largely go unlooked. And I think that there's a class of young black men and black boys that fall into that get no protection or talked about at all. You know, we look at, and I've always said this in this country, we take care of 2 groups of people. We take care of, and people don't believe this, but it's true. We take care of extremely poor people and we take care of extremely wealthy people. Everybody else, you're on your own. Yeah. You're on your own. Yeah.
You were a girl dad.
Yes.
But you also have one son, or
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So out of the all six, because I count my bonus children in there. So only one girl.
Only one girl.
Yes.
Okay. So recently saw a post of you at a daughter's basketball game where she was cheering. Yes. And you were on the court presenting her with flowers. Yes. Your son, youngest son, was also on the court presenting her with flowers. Yes. And I commented, chivalry is not dead. Right. And you said, we've got to teach this. Talk to me about that a little
100%. I think it's one of the things that we don't get taught early on. We don't get taught, back to the quote, how to respect our black women and how to treat them as queens as the way that they are. And so I think it's very important that we instill that very young, and that my son opens doors. You know, he holds doors for everyone. He understands that. He knows that. You know, I'm saying I'm yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no. I'm a
Southern gentleman.
Southern gentleman, you know, all day. And so I think that we have to lay that foundation so when you're tested later on, which is going to come, you're going to be tested.
Right.
But you have that base to go back to. And so for my daughter, I also want her to know that this is how you're treated. You're not treated any other way but this way. You're always to be respected and always to be held to this level, because that tells you how you govern yourself in relationships. And one of my most proud moments as a girl's dad, there's a Beyonce song. It's DJ Khaled, Shining, Shining, Shining. And in there, she has a lyric where she says, a fella can't make me fancy. So my daughter added to that, a fella can't make me fancy because I got a daddy.
Ooh.
That's a T-shirt.
It was that was the moment for me that said, okay, I'm doing okay with this. Right. And so, I think that we learn, and we're honest and open as men. We learn from our mistakes in our relationships. Absolutely. There are times when I didn't do that, when I didn't respect who I was with as a partner and did not respect them at all and was doing whatever I was doing. But then you have to make up for that. And the way you make up for that is by owning it. You own it with the person you were with at that time and say, yeah, I was horrible, this and that. But then you also own it in reflecting, this is what I want you to see, daughter. This is what I want you to see, how you grow up and how you should be treated.
Man, there's so many layers to you, brother. and so many layers to this conversation. And realistically, this could be, you alone could be a 2-3 day podcast easily. Man, there's so much we want to cram into this. So we got to pivot. And I don't want to use that term because I don't want to give props out to anybody else's podcast. So we got to shift. Shout out to the pivot.
Let me set it up.
Set it up, brother.
Things are going well on all fronts, and you go in for a routine doctor's visit.
It wasn't even routine.
Let's back up.
It wasn't even routine.
And you're right, because when I read the article in the Triangle Business Journal, so you were a workout.
Yeah.
You work out. You're in great shape.
Yeah.
You're a martial artist.
Yeah.
Which is why I stopped giving you a hard time about wearing that central hat and that Duke. I'm like, yeah, this brother's a martial artist. He runs 3 miles a day. 3 miles a day. Lifts weights. I'm leaving that alone. I can't walk up those stairs and not be out of breath. So you go through your daily routine.
Yeah.
Let's back up, because you said something really early on in the podcast that you lost your father at 57, and of course we all did.
Yes.
So in losing your father, it makes you think about your own mortality.
Yes, absolutely.
At least it did for me.
Yes.
Talk about that, and then I'll get to what I want to ask you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad was probably the most healthy person I knew. Worked out every morning. I've never seen him drink. He said he didn't drink, but you always take it as that. They're going to tell you but I've never seen him drink in my life, never seen him smoke in my life. I was in the Navy, so I did what Navy guys do. Enjoy an adult beverage, cigars, all of that. That was my life. So for me, if the healthiest person I knew in my life died from a heart attack at 57, then that was my ceiling expiration date. Wow. For me, that was 57 was, okay, if I get there. That was the top. That was the making it to the point of expiration was 57. So I've always thought, well, I'll be out of here by 57 anyway. And so that was what that did for me.
Wow. All right. So knowing that, you're working out, you're jogging, you're running, you're lifting weights, you're doing your martial arts. March of 2002. Yes. When you start feeling this pain. Talk about it for me.
So it was a nagging back pain, like right below where your ribs are and right in that middle. So nagging, but not constant. Just at times nagging, but not constant, nagging, but not constant. I thought it was anything. I did it lifting weights, did it walking the dog, did it in martial arts, did it in sparring, whatever. Could have been anything. So that continued and continued and continued. Still didn't think anything of it. And so my now father-in-law, he's a kinesiologist, and he had the kinesiotherapy program at Shaw, actually said, well, that back pain is related to kidney. And so I'm like, oh, well, kidney stone. Kidney infection at worst. Still went on for months, didn't really think anything of it. My birthday was coming, knew I was going to the beach, so I'm going to go enjoy myself, and I'll deal with whatever later. And so there I started to have some blood in my urine. And so still, it's just the stone hitting something as it's trying to process its way out. And so
Have you had kidney stones before?
Never. Okay. So I thought this was just a part of the process. So my fiance wife now actually walked in the bathroom while I was there and was like, what? What is going on? So I'm like, well, it's nothing. She's like, no, you're going to the doctor when we get back. And so from there, she made an appointment with the urologist. And the day I got back, I went to the urologist. So the urologist says, hey, go get a urine sample. We're going to send you through an x-ray. So after the x-ray, she came back and said, well, I don't know that we got everything we need, so I'm going to put you through a CT. And so I'm like, oh, okay, no problem, whatever. So we go through the CT, and she's like, well, let me put you back through again because I still don't think we got everything we need. So on that second one, I'm like, yeah, something's up. Something's completely up. So get through the second one. She comes in and she says, hey, do we need to call someone about your diagnosis? And I was like, I don't need to call anybody about a kidney stone. Yeah, no, I'm good. And she was like, oh, no, sweetie, this is a large size tumor and I'm fairly certain it's cancer and late stage.
So, yeah, which brings us to this point. Renal cell carcinoma is what you were diagnosed with, AKA kidney cancer. I guess, so when you heard that news, where did you go immediately mentally?
It was, I'm not ready to go. So mentally, I'd always prepare myself that 57 would be it.
Got you.
But I thought I'd at least get to 57. Let me at least get there, and at least 56, somewhere in that area. And so that was it. And so it was immediate like, oh man, I have so much left to teach my kids. There are things that I have to do. And so that was the first day or two. And so then it was, everything moved so fast that I didn't get to be in that space for long.
Got it.
So it was back to the doctor that I was referred to Duke, going through everything, had an amazing urologist, amazing team at Duke, who he said that these are your two options. You're the patient, so I'll leave it to you. So I had biopsy, and of course it came back positive. And then he said, what kind of concerns me is, you have 2 lymph nodes that are close by that also look enlarged as well. So he said, we can do it easy way. I can give you a small incision, take your kidney out, you're done. He said, or the other way is we do a full open surgery. Open you completely up. I'll take your kidney, I'll take some lymph nodes, and I'll take anything else that I see that worries me once I have you open. And I said, hey, let's do it. If we're going to do it, let's do it. Full surgery. And so I had the fully open surgery. So I will thank them because I do have a perfect ab line now. perfect ab line for where the incision was. But it was one of the scariest things I've ever been through because I had never been sick. I've never had surgery, never had any surgery, major or minor. So my first surgery was an open surgery to remove my kidney, adrenal, and 9 lymph nodes.
9 lymph nodes.
Yes. Yes.
All the years of athletics, basketball, no broken bone, no, nothing.
Yeah, I have these pinkies that everybody that plays receiver and or basketball ends up with their fingers that look like this. And so
But no illnesses.
never, nothing. And so it was that, I think that was the scary part.
So, I mean, this gives me so many questions. Let's focus on the family side of this. Yes. How do you explain to young kids, because even your 28-year-old is young to me, yes. How do you explain to young kids that this is what daddy's going through?
So my youngest don't fully know. Gotcha. They just know I had to have surgery because this is my second marriage. So I have them every weekend. So I get them from Friday to Sunday every week. So they just knew that there was a period where I had surgery and I told them I had to have my kidney removed, that we can't go to dad's for a couple weeks. And so they didn't fully know. And so for my oldest, it was just flat out, here's what it is. And so, I told him, had the conversation with him. And then I also started going through, and this is one of the things where you start to go through your Rolodex and say, okay, who else do I need to tell that I don't want them to find out from someone else? And so I did that process the night before surgery. And I'm sure I missed some people and some people that I have to apologize to because I missed them. But that was the process before surgery.
Got it. Talk about, because I know she's a strong woman, you married her. Talk about how your then fiance, now wife, helped you get through the process.
She was a rock, man. And I think one of the things that was crazy is that 2 of her closest friends also had cancer, and she was also a caregiver for both of them.
Wow.
And one specifically had kidney cancer. Wow. And had to have her kidney, spleen, and pancreas and some other things removed as well. So she had been through this before. And so she kind of knew what we were facing. And so she was an absolute rock. And she slept in that little chair in the hospital for the 4 days we were there. And she was 100% the person that made me go, because I wouldn't have went. I would have been like, okay, we'll ride this out until it happens. And my urologist was very frank, like, well, she saved your life. Like, she literally saved your life.
Wow.
And so it was stage 3, and it had spread to my lymph nodes. But the interesting thing was that, so it had 2 lymph nodes were cancerous, and they were huge, but they were connected. So they took 9. There was no cancer in any of the others except for those 2. They were connected, and the cancer had not spread from my kidney to my adrenal, which the kidney and the adrenal are connected. So what the doctor said was my immune system had stepped in and said, no, we're going to keep you right here. So my tumor was huge on my kidney, and the 2 lymph nodes were huge because it was keeping it to those 2
Contained?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And so there was no cancer in the margins. It was literally contained to those spaces.
At what point in your discomfort, seeing some blood in the urine, at what point would you have gone on your own?
Probably when I couldn't walk. I think.
Yeah. So actually, and that leads me to something you wrote in the article. You said, in my community, Black men are rarely allowed to acknowledge vulnerabilities.
Yep.
Articulating pain, physical or mental, is seen as a sign of weakness, so we don't do it.
Right.
Is that where you were?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
What do you say to brothers who, because I'm sure there's some brothers who are going to be watching this podcast who are doing in that very place right now. What do you say to them?
I tell them that I went from somebody who did an annual exam when I had time to. I went from that person to having a primary care physician and urologist and oncologist, a cardiologist, a physical therapist, a counselor, and any other thing that I think I might need.
Wow.
If there's anything that's a little bit off, I'm calling somebody.
Well, this is well educated.
Yes.
Roles beyond roles, in the most prominent tech campus in America, Research Triangle Park, elected official, appointed official, and you would not have gone.
And have amazing health care.
Amazing health care. It's there.
Yes.
But you, totally transparent, admitting, I would not have gone until I was on the ground.
Absolutely not. And it's the way that we're brought up. It's the way that we're encouraged to suck it up and man up. Suck it up, man up, and go about your day.
Wow.
Figure it out. And that's very, and those things are still in me. My wife now tells me that I'm a 70-year-old Black man. Because it's literally how we grow up. We grow up a lot in faith, and faith is the basis for most of our households. And so that's what we believe. And it is 100% what we should be doing. But there's also works that go along with faith. And part of those works is to take your butt to the doctor.
So man, it's fun. I'm glad you landed there, because that's exactly where my shift was going to be.
Yes.
So I'm a big believer that things don't happen for a reason. There's no such thing as happenstance or luck or whatever.
Right.
You talked about your fiance, now wife, having gone through this with two other people. I'm a big believer that God put her in your life for this very reason.
Absolutely.
Because she'd already gone through it.
Yes.
But at the same time, and I know you're a man of faith.
Yes.
How did this shake your faith, or did it shake your faith? Did you have that conversation? Why me, God? How did that work? And in terms of your faith, how does it shape your faith, I guess?
I don't think so. I think if anything, it strengthened it more than anything else, because I don't think outside of those first 2 days and then dealing with the anxiety, cancer patients call it scanxiety. You have this every time you have to take a scan of the cancer's back or this or doing labs or anything like that. Those are the times when you deal with the anxiety and the questioning. But outside of that, I think it actually made me lean more into faith. And it also made me lean more into wanting to be a better person. And it's amazing that you have to have, this is normally what happens, you have a health scare or something like that. And it's like, man, I ain't been doing right these 43
So
years.
you had your come to Jesus
Yes,
meeting.
yes. So it shapes how you deal with people in everything. It shapes your patience. It shapes your understanding. It shapes everything that you do. And in some instances, it takes your patience away because there's some things that you know that you're not willing to deal with anymore. So it's like, well, I don't really have time for this, right. But as far as faith goes, it made me a more faithful person, 100%, 100%.
So the process, your time frame,
Yes.
from initial diagnosis to the announcement to you that you in remission. What time frame were we talking about? And was there chemo and radiation?
So from June 9th of 2022 until just this past March. So a little under a year. So 9 months or so.
And you're in full remission.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
God.
absolutely. No chemo or radiation because I think cancer is so different. It's one of the things that I found out on this journey. Everybody thinks cancer is cancer, and it's not. Based off the various forms of cancer. There are even different forms of kidney cancer. So every cancer has little variations. Kidney cancer doesn't respond well to chemo or radiation. So we did immunotherapy, which has been amazing for people with kidney cancer. And so it literally trains your immune system to stop the cancer spread.
Through medication?
Yes. So it's an infusion like chemotherapy. So you do an infusion. Well, the other thing that comes with that is that it can have the adverse effects that chemo does on other organs. And so normally you see it after your second treatment. And so after my second treatment, I had heart issues. And so I felt like I was having a heart attack, had to have ambulance and it was from the immunotherapy. And so my blood pressure was amazing post-surgery, which is so odd, but it was because the cancer was out and everything else. So my blood pressure was the best it had ever been, and it spiked. It went from, even my heart rate, my resting heart rate was great because I run, so I pay attention to it. It was down to like 55 beats per minute. And one night I saw it just kept going up and kept going up, and it went to like 80. And so I'm like, well, this isn't normal. And so we had to stop after that second dose. But it's still, so what the oncologist said is that your second dose is what you need. That's why you have the side effects from it, because it's doing what it needs to do. And so he's like, well, we'll stop it. So we stopped it for 3 months, and then I came back, and he was like, you're in full remission. So we have it. If we need to go back to it again, then we have it and we can use it. But I don't want you to continue just for the sake of continuing.
Got it. You mentioned in the article, and you've spoken about anxiety.
Yes.
Scanxiety.
Yes.
And your mental health.
Absolutely.
How was it impacted? How was it affected? You mentioned depression.
Yeah.
You talk a bit about what you went through from a mental health standpoint.
I think that we all view ourselves as Superman. Nothing's ever going to happen to me, and when it does, I'll just be out. That's it. I'm never going to be sick and have to deal with this illness and deal with treatment or deal with going and having blood draws every week and going through this. So for me, it was constant thinking, never being able to turn your mind off. And so you can't sleep, which then in turn leads to, oh, am I depressed? I don't know if I'm depressed. Oh, well, I haven't been out of bed in a couple of days, so I might be depressed. Well, I haven't done anything but lay here and watch TV. I haven't eaten. So, yeah, I'm probably depressed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I am. And so I think that was it. And so for me, it was, okay, let's talk through this and let's try to figure it out, because back to, again, I'm very self-aware. And so I know, like, okay, this is what's going on. And so I did talk to a therapist, and we tried some medication, and it didn't work for me. Like, it didn't work at all. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get back into my regular routine. I'm going to start getting myself back up and going to work out, start doing those other things, start spending more quality time with my kids, not just them being there, but spending quality time with them, investing in what I do and investing in myself. Manicure, pedicure. I tell brothers out there, go
My
make
man.
sure, make sure you get it. And this is, I had never done that before.
Really?
Ever. Never. Was always one like, I don't need that. I don't need that. And then I went. And I go by
Life change.
myself now. You know, like, I only went with my wife at the, you know,
Right,
but now
right.
I'm like, oh, you can't make it? Well, I'm keeping my appointment.
Same way. There's oftentimes I am the only man, and certainly the only brother up in the shop. Don't care.
no care at all. But those things, and we hear it, and it's an overused term for self-care, but it is so important. And so for me, that was it. You know, that helped me so much, because what I didn't want to fall back into was going to visit Dr. Hennessy and letting Dr. Hennessy try to fix everything. Because in large part, we know that Dr. Hennessy just going to make stuff worse. He's going to make things completely worse.
And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Hennessy is that brown.
That's right.
If you have any questions, it's that brown.
That's right.
So anybody hearing your story, hearing your testimony, hearing even me just going through the bio, might take a look at Raymond Trapp and say, man, he's an overachiever. And I say that in a positive way. So you have had a definition of success for yourself. How did this change, maybe, your current definition of success?
I think it brought more family into that. Because even with what's listed on my bio, what's listed on my resume, I still think I have tons to do. You know, when I see it.
That was the follow-up. He and I have had this conversation, and people would look at us and say, you all have reached some degree of success, and it's relative, but you've reached whatever degree of success, and we are still saying, haven't scratched the surface at 58, at 57, haven't scratched the surface. You'll hold on, wait and see, because it's coming, and there's so much more to do. But you mentioned family in that as well, and you mentioned the time with your kids, with them not just being there, but quality time. And I'm a true believer that you can be present and absent the same time. And someone in your role with the types of responsibility that's on you, I can imagine you being, and I'm speculating, but I can imagine you being a person who can be present, and your mind is at RTP, and your mind is at the county commissioner's office, and they're right there. And I think we're probably all guilty of it.
Absolutely. So too much. You know, I think that's what we do, and it's back to that constant level of what's next and continuing to perfect yourself and continuing to work. And I have to do this. I got to answer this email as soon as it comes in. I got to answer this text as soon as it comes in, because I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And we got to stop. You know, I heard it was another quote, and I can't remember who said it either, but money isn't real. Money's not real at all. Time is. So what happens is the more money you make, the more you can control your time, because that's what it is. So that's what DoorDash and all of these other things that shop for you and save you time, because you can control your time. Now, that put in perspective to me that quality time with my family was what all the work allowed me to do. It allowed me to spend time. So if I can spend time, then I need to be present in that time, because they're growing up. You know, there aren't many of us. We've got to this level now where, you know, we can pick up and take vacations and not think about it or do this. My kids' lives are completely different than my lives when I was growing up. You know, I was buying my daughter something the other day, and it was just a little something. It's like, oh, it's $50. She's like, that doesn't cost. That's cheap. You know, what? You know, like, but that's why we have to be present. You know, because the one thing that we do control with more wealth is time. And so make sure that you're giving that time, and make sure that you're giving the people in your lives that time and that honor. And like I say, and just to bring this a little bit closer from where we started when talking about, relationships and, Black women and all of that, making sure that everyone in your tribe feels respected. And so that, for me, that's been a huge part of it. And I think I mentioned when we were talking, my ex-wife and I are best friends. And a lot of people don't understand that relationship, but it's because she held me down for so long coming through this. So of course we still, we have a great relationship for the kids and everything else, but that's to everything. And I think that's another thing that this journey has taught me, is that fully respecting everyone in your life and the role that everyone plays. And so we have to take care of our tribe, because if we don't, no one will.
Brother, yeah, that's that mic drop moment. I don't know where we go from here,
Right.
so other than rapping.
Except an invitation back.
Absolutely.
There's some more layers to this onion that we gotta pull back. It was to Darren's point of truly believing that things are ordained by God, steps ordered by God. There was a reason. I told him, I said, I got the guy. I got the guy for the. He said, what do you know about it? I don't know nothing about it. And I said, man, with everything in me, D, I was supposed to meet this brother. And, I've coming from the league, I've been around athletes, I've been around celebrities, I've been around this, that, and this, and the other. But we did this because we're two regular guys. That's right. And I'm like, we need to showcase and highlight not the celebrities, right, but the regular guys who are great fathers, who are incredible business people, who are good husbands, spouses, partners, etc. And we could not have had a better choice in you, my brother. This has been phenomenal. Can't wait to the next conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thank you both. This has been amazing. Like I said at the beginning, I'm glad we got a chance to connect, and anytime you all need me, I'm here.
Appreciate it. Hey guys, this is a wrap. Thank you for joining the Soul of a Man podcast. We out.